Hi there, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Weekly Chat with myself and Ralph. Now, this week we are going to be talking about three things. Firstly, we're going to be talking about the upcoming UK election, because why not? Secondly, we're going to be talking about AI in finance, specifically in wealth management in the sell side and on the buy side as well. And the third thing we're going to be talking about is the improving prospect for IPOs. So, in terms of the first thing, the upcoming UK election, obviously this is generally a business podcast, but we can't really ignore the fact that there is a general election going 4th of July. And I think that, obviously we've seen the debates, the TV debates starting up. I, for one, just to put it out there, I give zero credence to whatever happens in the debates, because I think that what the debating does, all that does on the TV is it just proves you're good at debating. That doesn't prove that you're going to be a great leader. It doesn't prove about anything particularly about your policies, I don't think. Anyway, but what I do think it is good for, it's good for gaining engagements, because I feel that a lot of people are not generally interested in politics, and therefore this is an easier way for more people to get involved or digest information. So we'll be talking a bit, obviously, more about that and more thoughts about that. But yeah, I mean, what do you think of what you've seen so far, Ralph?
Well, well, I would tend to agree. I mean, if you look at America, you have 18 months basically of lead time into the election. I would say that's a tad too much. But in our country here, I think is a month really enough to make a decision, an informed decision? I would say possibly not, especially if I have nothing to read where people might actually lay out what they stand for. And obviously, we've seen this before. This happens every time. The manifestos are only being released sort of several weeks into the lead up of the election. I must say I am disappointed that I'm not able to read a considered manifesto of what the parties stand for in this particular election for the next 5 years before a television debate is being put on.
Yeah.
So that's my first note of disappointment, basically. And the second note of disappointment comes as I'm watching the TV debate, which appears to have been little more than trading, I wouldn't say exactly insults, but trading controversial assessments of the other party's policies, mostly in the past. Well, I don't really want to talk about the past. I've lived through the past. I know what's going on there. What I want to know is what is going to be happening if I vote for Labour or the Conservative Party in this case, because these were the two parties showcased, of course, in this debate. And I found precious little beyond pedestrian platitudes, almost general statements about what the policies are going to be. So I need to look around on the internet to find pronouncements and maybe assessments by journalists to help me with this. And so that's not really something which I must admit has impressed me very much, in particular because, I mean, every general election is important, of course, but this one is particularly important because we are about to see change. I think that much we can probably say, following almost 15 years, or maybe it's more, administrative management of the Conservative Party. And so I think I would want to know, and let me just not sit on the fence. I mean, it doesn't really matter who I vote for, of course, but you see, I would very much want to see change. in this country, because I believe that the Conservatives have presided over an unprecedented chain of poorly managed and ill-informed decisions since David Cameron. I know I'm not alone in this assessment, but everybody who does share this assessment will surely need to be able to evaluate what a change might look like. It is not enough to be unhappy with the past. We need to be happy with the prospect for the future. And yes, of course, I have seen the 6 pledges. I broadly understand what Labour stands for, but it is not being done in a succinct, informative, transparent way, which I believe allows the electorate to make an informed decision. And I'm disappointed by this because it sort of conjures up the spectre of the past. When have we seen this last? Because that was the referendum for Brexit, where very similar lack of informational campaign was being conducted. So that's my first impression. Disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, just to viewers, listeners, that what I am, have been waiting for is for the manifestos to come out, and I am going to be doing a side by side comparison as I can, so that you can see where parties are on specific issues. Now, I don't know if you. I doubt that you're going to be able to do a direct comparison on every single thing, but I think you'll be able to do a reasonable comparison. I did this in the last election. It was a lot of work, but I felt that it was useful because at least you can then make an informed decision. Because I think what happens at the moment is that the political war is fought on sound bites, for whatever, in a way, you sort of think like the £2,000 thing from the Conservatives has been disproved by the BBC's, investigation and things like that. But the fact that it's £2,000, people remember that. So even after it's not proved to be correct, it's something that sticks because it's a soundbite. The thing with Sunak and the D-Day thing, that sticks with you. Is that something? I mean, clearly that is highly offensive to a lot of people, but ultimately, does that actually say anything about what the leadership could look like under Sunak if he incredibly managed to win the election? Probably not. But these things stick with people. And that's what, in a way, I really believe that when they go there to the polling booth, these are the moments that stick with them. If they're not really that, they kind of decided, but as they're putting pen to paper or pencil to paper or whatever, those are the things that they remember. But anyway, like I say, I am going to be doing this. I mean, a lot of people talk about this is the TikTok election. It is. And, at the moment, it seems that, Labour seems to be winning. And actually, while we're on the subject of winning, I do think that this whole idea of when you have a TV debate, who's won the debate? I mean, really, it just doesn't do anything for me. I don't find it convincing. I don't believe that it is something that people should be basing their decisions on. But then that's why I'm going to be putting this thing together so that at least, if you read it, then hopefully you will have something to base things on. So, I'll try and keep it as neutral as possible.
I would certainly like to receive it because if you do the work, then I don't have to. So I'm going to be looking at that very, very keenly. Now, another comment maybe on this particular election is that until very recently, it seemed to sort of play out as a little bit of a boring election. I
Mm.
mean, there was going to be the choice between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. Hardly a new thing. We've seen that
Mm.
kind of thing before coming up. And this time it almost looks as if Labour is set to win. I know you can never make predictions in politics with confidence, but I think pragmatically everybody expects Labour to win. But there's a new spanner in the works now, and this has been thrown into the works by Mr. Farage,
Mm-hmm.
who took over Reform UK, which is, I think, the third manifestation of his sort of political aspirations following UKIP and the Brexit Party.
Mm.
And what is interesting, well, first of all, I would say that is another, so one trick pony party or one issue
Mm.
party. This one is anti-immigration, where the other one is, the word clearly suggested was Brexit, which
Mm.
is sort of also
Yeah.
anti-immigration, and UKIP was very similar. So we know what that party stands for. What I find noteworthy, let's say, that the approval ratings in the polls jumped up from single digit, something like 5 percentage points, I think, to 20 percentage points, which is 2 percentage points within in reach of below the current Conservative Party approval rating. So from standstill to almost even with the Conservatives. And that tells you something about the sentiment of the electorate in the land, I think. Nobody currently appears to believe, that the Conservative Party has a actionable, viable plan for the future.
Yeah.
And I do wonder what lies ahead for our society here in the UK. And the reason I say that is that when you've been looking at the continent over the last, let's say, 5 years, certainly 10 years, what we've seen there is what I would call quite unpalatable parties springing up. Right-wing parties, anti-immigration, anti-European Union, which means anti-treaty, basically, isolationist in nature, and these parties have found widespread approval everywhere, in the Netherlands, in Italy, in France, and also in Germany. And we've been sort of, I believe, I can only speak for myself, but I think we've been all looking at this and we were thinking, well, what have these people going on there? At least we haven't got that in our country. But now we do, until now. Reform UK may be similar to Brexit Party in UKIP, but they have a lot more support in the population. And they are what some people have called an issue merchant. I really like that word, because it's a populist party which doesn't really stand for very much themselves, but they understand what people are angry about and exploit that anger for their own political goals. And so we have that now. And I wonder what is going to happen over the next, let's say, 5 years, during which Labour is likely to be in power. At the end of that period, we're going to be faced with another general election. And in that general election, are we going to witness a radicalization of our society here? Is then going to be the choice between Labour and a strengthened Reform UK party. So that's not, these thoughts are not relevant for this particular election, of course, and they may not even be relevant. I just want to throw this out there as something which I'm observing with some measure of concern.
Yeah, I think that is, that is interesting. Although I would say, I mean, I've heard I believe there's been comments from Farage about Sunak not understanding the culture of this country, which I think is, I mean, if he actually said that in those words, that's not a great thing to say about someone who is from an ethnic minority leading the country, it's either going to galvanize his supporters, or it's going to, or it may, or it may make people who would waver think, actually, yes, all the hype about Farage is in fact correct, and therefore, although the Conservatives aren't covering themselves with glory, and neither is Sunak by going home early from D-Day events, maybe they are slightly less unpalatable than, say, voting for Farage, for instance. So I don't know. I mean, but the
I
problem
see.
is, if it all descends into stuff like that, then it becomes all, it becomes about little things, just specific things, not about what the whole thing actually means. So anyway, yeah. So like I say, the whole idea of me trying to summarize or put together so that you can have a read across comparison it genuinely is about trying to help everyone understand it better. So yeah, like I say, I have been waiting for these manifestos. They're not all out yet. I can't do all of the parties, so I'll probably do Labour, Conservative, Lib Dems, maybe Greens, maybe Reform, just for a bit of a, obviously, because they've got a load of blanks against things, I'd imagine. But yeah, just for comparison, and we'll see. I don't know when that's going to come out. Probably this week. It depends when the manifestos are out and how quickly I can get on it. So anyway, I'll let you know.
Cool.
Right. So let's talk about artificial intelligence in finance. So this is the second thing. So artificial intelligence in finance. I mentioned a few things this week about how a wealth manager. God, who was it again? God, my mind's gone blank. Anyway, biggest wealth manager in the UK. They are using this to. They're using this to in their sort of calls. They've got an AI system monitoring calls, which tries to identify whether a client is vulnerable or not.
This is St. Jimmy's. This is
Yeah,
St. James's Fund.
St James's Place.
St.
That's
James's
the one.
Place. Sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
SCJ. Yeah, and I mean, it's supposed to be like when I first anyway. So it's supposed to be identifies vulnerable people. Therefore, it then implies that then the advisor then has to change their tone and provide more appropriate advice. I mean, cynically, when I read that, I thought there'll be a big green light saying, right, sell this person as much as you possibly can because they're gullible, right? I mean, I don't think it's like that, but it sort of sounded like it could be like that to me. I mean, that's kind of interesting, and especially for them because they have been under a lot of pressure with regard to the opaqueness of their fees, the standard, and the amount of the advice that they give for those fees. So they're quite sensitive on that front. And then we've got all the, we've got stuff on the sell side, so like on the investment banking side, where you've got AI involved in helping analysts. And then on the buy side, so the investment side of things, where you have got AI assisting the fund managers by flagging any unusual, investment decisions. I mean, for what it's worth, I think that the AI in, say, the buy side and the sell side in particular, are going to be used when you get the traditional, year end kind of interviews or whatever, pay reviews, and I'm sure that they are going to be used as threats against those who are wanting too much money for the services that they provide. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So anyway, those are a few of the things, just observations from this week. But what do you reckon, Ralph?
Yeah, I thought the AI news which came out last week, insofar it relates to the City of London or the investment or the financial sector, was very interesting indeed, because I think in general, as a comment about the AI world, we have now seen various permutations or various versions of ChatGPT, and everybody else has the LLM, large language model, got Gemini and Claude, and everybody does them. So they have been primed on learning. We have developed these to various stages of their of their development, and it is now time to find commercial applications for them. And I think that's the sort of phase in which we're in now. People are looking for actual applications, how they can be embedded into their commercial activity. And it is because of that that I found the news flow very interesting, because these 4 instantations or 4 examples of how AI is finding employment, if you wish, in the value chain generated by financial services companies are all different, all 4 of them. If you look at them again as a list, St. James's Place is using them to support the way that advisors interact with customers. The other one was performance management. The investment bank there, or the fund manager, uses AI to improve the way in which the performance of their fund managers is being measured. Then there is AI which is basically trading and taking over, or at least complementing, assisting in the very process of stock picking itself. So that's the fund manager's job. And finally, there is a study which has investigated to which extent an equity analyst's jobs can be assisted by, indeed, one believes, replaced with AI in the future. So these are all different aspects of the value creation in the City of London. And so to me, the first comment is that really looks as if we're cranking up to seeing some real world applications of what to this up to this point has been a relatively theoretical development of an LLM. Yes, we've seen Midjourney and we've seen all the generative ideas, and this is all very cool, but does it actually have a commercial value? So. Now it's beginning to have a commercial value. So the second point is, I'd just like to comment a little bit on these 4 things. I mean, the first one is St. James's Place, where we have just been treated to the skeptical commentary of the CEO of Watson's Daily of what that might actually be.
Yeah. Sorry about
I have a friend who, exactly. Thank you very much. I have a friend who is a psychologist and who is very much linked into the AI world. In fact, he is himself creating LLMs to a specific purpose, and he is basically putting the emotion back into various effects. Now, I know from talking to him very much in detail about the way he does this, that this is possible, and second, that this has an actual value. So when I read this about St. James's Place, my reaction wasn't, this is just rubbish, though, isn't it? Intangible stuff. This is never going to work. I actually think it is going to work. LLMs, AIs are to some extent capable of detecting and correctly categorizing human emotion. Doesn't mean they have emotions themselves. It just means they are able to detect and categorize what human emotion displays. And this, of course, is an unmitigated asset if you are a fund manager. So I don't know whether this is going to be employed in the way in which I'm going to talk about it next, but it is of course possible. If you, for example, sense, or the AI assistant senses that you're talking to a person who is highly vulnerable, well, then maybe it wouldn't be a good thing to flock that person high risk investments, which if they go down, the person might jump off the next building or something. I'm making this deliberately dramatic. Indeed, this sits very well in St. James's Place's already existing investment or advice model. Because when you talk to St. James's Place advisors or partners, they talk about behavioral aspects in their advice model. So in other words, they look at your utility. Are you risk averse? Are you risk embracing? Do you think that 100 quid gain is going to be worth more to you than 100 quid loss? All of these questions are being asked, and they canvas this and they create a model of your personal investment utility. And so this type of emotional engine, if you want to call it that, sits very well in St. Jimmy's already existing investment customer service model. And I can see absolutely that this might actually be an incremental step to them, which creates value to St. James's Place and to the customers. So that's that comment. So I can see some commercial reality or some commercial viability there, sense there. The next one is performance management. But performance management is something we never talked about. I mean, we only ever talk on this show about equity analysts, investment bankers, fund managers. But performance management is sort of living in the shadows a little bit of these glamorous activities, these customer-facing activities where you make a lot of money. These are sort of more which would have been used to be called back office jobs. They measure the performance of a fund and they try to ascertain whether the fund manager, if they outperformed for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. And the right reasons would have been a responsible professional assessment of the risks they were taking, measured against the mandate they have. Outperformance of an index can be achieved by doing that, but it can also, of course, be achieved by putting 20% of the fund into cryptocurrency. And if Bitcoin jumps by 10 times in that particular quarter, then the fund manager is going to look like God. But of course, they didn't really do a good job. They just basically took a punt, might as well have gone to the local casino. And I'm talking flippantly about this, but this is, of course, exactly what performance management is designed to do. To assess why performance has been achieved, why the performance of the fund is what it has, is what it was, and then to assess the professionality of the fund managers who were generating these returns. And this can be done clearly again better using AI complementary capabilities. And this is something which we're seeing now. And again, that is therefore a commercial application of something which has so far lived in this sort of maybe ivory tower world, perhaps of LLMs, ivory tower, although they were made public or available to the public, they still didn't really have an obvious commercial application. Third one is fund management and also analysts AI. I'm going to discuss them briefly as one, because I am a nerd, as you all know, and I happen to have read the actual technical paper introducing that particular analyst AI. And these guys have been maybe not particularly kind to their LLM, because what they were asking the LLM to ascertain, to produce, to generate, is performance beating returns against a set of analysts based on a set of two accounts. Now, two accounts give you only 3 years of data, and you can't base an earnings forecast, a projection of any kind of financials on just a data set, a time series of 3 data. That doesn't really quite work. And so I was surprised I did that. Nevertheless, the outcome made me smile because they used the AI in 2 manifestations. The first one was what they themselves call a naive AI, which is sort of if we call up ChatGPT and we just type in the prompt, please outperform the index. That would be a naive AI. The prompt is not specific. It just asks for something. And if you did that, the researchers found that the AI was able to outperform, that's the wrong word, was able to be accurate in the earnings forecast 50% of the time, and the human analysts were also accurate 50% of the time. So there are 2 conclusions here. Well, first of all,
pretty amazing.
Well, there really are 2 conclusions here. Well, first of all, the human analysts aren't particularly good, are they? And second, the AI isn't really very good either, because I can replicate the huge expense which has flown into the research and the setting up of this model by using a coin and flipping that, which will produce exactly the same results.
Yes.
So great. The researchers, of course, knew this also, and they employed a better AI. And that is, they employed something which is known in the industry, I believe, in the AI research industry, I believe, not that I'm an expert, as, what is it? COT. It's called chain of thought. And that is when you, and this, I'll show you this works, it's really weird. When you call up ChatGPT and you type in a prompt, and then you say, please think about this like a person would, like a human being would, you get better results because the AI is now putting itself into the sort of persona of a human being and is replicating chains of human reasoning. And when the researchers did that, then the AI was right 60% of the time. So again, 2 points here. So 10 percentage points better than the human analysts, which made me smile again, because if you ask an LLM to employ human reasoning, all of a sudden it's better than the actually humans who you would think are the originator of this type of reasoning. And the second one is, again, well, 60% is better than 50%, but it ain't that great either, is it? So I'm going to stop talking about this now.
It's like that line in Anchorman, 60% of the time it works every time. So it's just, yeah, nice.
But so the paper is 40 pages long. It's getting very technical indeed. And what it also fails to do, in my view, is to understand and ask the question, why an analyst, when they were right, because it can be right for the wrong reasons. Again, that's like performance management. The fund manager can outperform the fund just because they were being reckless. An analyst can be right because they were lucky. And the research paper failed to probe, I believe, these deeper reasons for performance or underperformance. Nevertheless, reading all of this taught me 2 things again. One is the journey is clearly going to go towards a time where AI is going to do more than just simply assist analysts in their work. It is entirely conceivable that we are going to have an AI which is going to produce analysts' papers, analysts' research notes in several years' time from scratch. And when they do, and this is now where this links up with fund management, I do wonder whether the application of AI in the field of investment is not going to make redundant a lot of the value chain which we find in the City of London or on Wall Street. Because if you think about it in this way, if there was an AI which would be able to generate performance or benchmark beating returns in a fund, Well, arguably that would make the fund manager redundant, but it would also make the analyst redundant because fund managers take analysts' reports
Hmm.
into consideration when they make their buy and sell decisions. If an AI can do that, well, then it can also execute the trades itself.
Hmm.
So it would make salespeople redundant and also traders. Now, obviously, that's not exactly what I'm expecting. People are not necessarily going to lose their jobs because their functions are going to be made redundant entirely. But a world in which AI is going to be a material contributor to the professional decisions, the professional value, which is currently created by fund managers, analysts, traders, and salespeople, and performance managers, is, I think, visible, is on the cards. And then at the very least, people in the cities are going to be paid a lot less because their value
Hmm.
creation is going to be a lot less visible. And so that, I think, is where the where the journey is going to go. Even
Hmm.
though currently I can still replicate a cutting edge study in analyst AI
Hmm.
with a coin toss.
Yeah.
But that's only
No.
now, and that's
Yeah.
not going to last for very long.
Yeah. And then,
That that
I mean,
ability.
there's stuff. I mean, I always remember as a salesperson that there's always a lot of complaints, usually from salespeople, about, oh, you're just churning out maintenance research. So
Yeah,
what that basically is see, as a salesperson, what you want is a really well researched report that makes you ideally one or two unusual, controversial, or different from the norm opinions that is well backed, and then has a decent sort of target price. So you want it a few, let's say 10-20% north of where it is now, rather than have this amazing report that basically says, and it's at fair value. You contrast that with the thing that you don't want, and which is what all the clients used to complain about, which was maintenance research, which basically said this company had these third quarter results. It was 10% up here, 5% down there, and our recommendation is a stronghold. Is like literally nothing you can do with that. And a lot of people complained that their inboxes and things would get clogged up with such things. Now,
yeah,
I would have thought that with the advent of AI, you could say, "Oh, this is an AI generated report." Basically, it is what it is, but we've got it on file, and we may use that in future to illustrate something else, but it's not anything. So to that extent, it means that you're not going to, you as an analyst may feel that you can use your time more efficiently potentially. But I have to I'd say, just as a quick aside here, that I've noticed, I won't say which newspaper it is, but it is a very famous international one that I've noticed recently. They've been doing some articles I have found. I've thought, is this for real? It's so basic. It's something that I could have gone, or actually one of my kids could have gone in and written. It's literally, this went up, that went down. They said that they were positive about the next quarter, and that's it. And I sort of thought, do you know what? AI could have done that. My kids could have done that, or AI could have done that. And I mean, they have got the
probably
name
have
of
done.
they have got the name of the the author, but you sort of think, seriously, that is a terrible thing, rubbish reporting. And I just wonder whether that, I mean, maybe we'll see some of that. I don't know.
Well, you see, the thing is, this sort of maintenance research, and we discussed this before when we did the little thing on AI, and I sort
Mm.
of allowed you guys to have a glimpse into what an analyst actually does on results
Mm.
day. Um, Even in maintenance research, there are different levels of quality. I mean,
Mm,
yes, you can say earnings were up 10%, and that's
mm,
against consensus was this, and
mm,
good Lord, I mean, you've already fallen asleep by that
yeah,
time.
yeah.
I'm sure everybody has.
Mm,
Now, that is going to be, I think, already possible to do by
mm,
AI, to have AI do.
mm,
And of course, in stockbrokers won't do this and then send the report to fund managers. The
mm,
fund managers will have their own AI,
mm,
and that AI will instantaneously, when the results come out, generate this type of first response very
mm,
quickly. So that the fund manager, while they're reading the press release, can probably have the AI in his ear or her ear and say that, earnings up against consensus, but there was a exceptional. There
mm,
is going to be some good analysis there, and I'm
mm,
absolutely convinced that's what AI is already going to be able to do.
mm,
But even within maintenance research, I mean, if you want to have a high quality first reaction node, this going to be this has to be more than just that. It has to reflect the insight of the analyst into the entire business model of the company and into the intention of the managers. They have to understand what is behind the numbers.
mm,
If, for example, the company was expected to increase dividends by 10%, and then they only increased it by 8%. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that there is a cash issue behind it? What is the considered response of the analyst? And
mm,
I think that is perhaps something which AI even now cannot do yet.
mm,
But the operative word is yet. The pace at which AI develops is breathtaking.
mm,
It is exponential, of course, everybody knows this, but it is in the steeper areas of the exponential curve already. And so
mm,
I would believe that even good and powerful, high quality first reaction nodes and maintenance research is perhaps going to be able to do by AI very soon, and then fund managers are just going to have like a like an app on your phone or something which you click, and then the AI is going to generate this, and you have it on your desk within a few minutes.
mm,
Um, and this is where we are going to go in the next inventor number 10 years. I think
mm,
the writing is on the wall for a lot of currently high cognitive jobs. And the low cognitive jobs are going to come first, which is people who do data entries and stuff like
mm,
this.
mm,
And the mid to high level cognitive jobs, like fund management, equity analysis, etc., they're going to be next.
mm.
And when that happens, I am going to be properly retired, and
Mm.
everybody else is as well, because all we're going to be doing is sitting in our houses and drink, well, whatever you might wish to drink. Coffee, in my case.
Good, good. So yeah, pretty upbeat stuff. So anyway, let's move on to the next thing, which is probably more upbeat. Which is it looks like there are definitely the prospects for IPOs, initial public offerings, is going
Oh,
to
yes.
looks like it feels like it's improving. We've got Raspberry Pi is the one that is going to be listing in the UK very soon. We've got and of course there is the prospect of Shein listing in London as well, which is causing a lot of controversy. But just generally speaking, I mean, I think it would be fair to say that we've been hearing positive noises from the likes of Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley last year, saying that the markets are picking up. The M&A, so merger and acquisition activity is picking up. Now, I mean, M&A and IPOs, they're different, but I kind of put them in the same sort of sphere in the sense that if markets are going well, then you tend to that means that there's more confidence. This is real, just it's very quite raw, quite basic the way I'm saying this, but if markets feel if the markets are going well, that implies confidence. If companies are confident, they will then be more inclined to buy other companies. That's where you get you get M&A going on. Equally, if markets are buoyant, what tends to happen is companies that are not that are not listed think actually we could do with some money. We want to sort of tap into this upturn, and so we will do an IPO. So that's basically another. So that's why I'm saying M&A and IPOs. Anyway, since probably I'd say middle of last year, it feels like Goldman Sachs, the likes of Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, have been saying we think that things are improving. I think Lazard's even said that things are improving. And we've seen M&A going on in America, with especially in the oil sector. We've seen loads of that going on and really big stuff. And then we've seen more IPOs starting to filter through. The London Stock Exchange is now saying that the pipeline is looking good. I imagine that that a lot of them are waiting until we have the election, because they will want a little bit more certainty about what's going to happen. But yeah, going back to the other thing, Shein, the politicians and the London Stock Exchange are very keen for Shein to list in London. We've not. Let's be honest, we've not won it. It looks like that London is the consolation prize, because even the New York Stock Exchange rejected Shein's proposals to do an IPO. So we're next in line potentially to benefit. The reason why there's controversy is, I personally, I'm not a fan of Shein. I think it's quite dodgy. The lawsuits are piling up in terms of the fact that they allegedly, although let's face it, they kind of copy stuff, and they don't care. They're just motor on and just let it pile up. I think potentially there is a very big risk, very big litigation risk here. And I think that it is something that they've so far been able to sweep aside as a private company. But once you start listing, on stock exchanges, it's not a good, it will come back to haunt you. But anyway, they're very keen. There's been a bit of pushback from fund managers saying that if they list, it means that the standards will have gone down. But anyway, basically, I think overall it seems there's a lot of feel-good factor. You've got the listing rule changes coming in. You've got potentially a new government. You've got interest rates coming down. You've got consumer confidence and business confidence rising. So all in all, if you put all of that together, it would imply that things are going to get better. But what do you think, Ralph?
Yeah, things are going to get better. We're going to need shades.
Yeah.
I do think that the IPO pipeline of the LSE has been a bit of a concern for, well, I was about to say all of us, but that just reminds everybody that we're still city boys at heart, I think. So the IPO pipeline of the LSE versus NYSE versus New York Stock Exchange has been empty, and London has certainly seen or regarded this with a more than a measure of concern. It now appears to be filling back up, and if indeed it does, then I think this is possibly a consequence of two things. One is the listing rules were simplified recently. We've talked about this in a previous program. And second is what you said. It looks as if the economy is about to do better. Certainly, the sort of stock market economy is going to do better. Inflation is now down to something in line of sight of 2%.
Mm-hmm.
That means interest rates are sort of about to come down. They have been announced to be reduced in Canada, I think, and
Right,
the ECB has also said they're going to reduce them. So this is more than just pie in the sky. It's more than just hope. In the UK, inflation is down. Surely the Bank of England's next after next move is going to be to put them down, and that will directly support share prices, specifically those share prices where most of the earnings forecasts are. Where most of the earnings are in the. That doesn't make sense. Where you have most of the value represented by an expectation of growing earnings. So growth stocks are going to be benefiting from a reduction of interest rates most. And that kind of creates a positive environment for IPOs. And so I'm thinking that we're seeing the start of this. We're seeing the benefits of this. A change of political party, that I don't know what this is going to be looked at, what the interpretation of the city at large is going to be. That, I believe, can go either way. We will just have to see, assuming that Labour comes in, what they actually really do in terms of the economy and what climate they are going to create for business. But I believe that these two aspects at least, and potentially even a change in political management coming up, are positive for the IPO pipeline in London. Specifically, talking about the types of IPOs coming up, well, Sheen, I can't really say that much about, but one other thing caught my eye, which is the mooted intention of Anglo American to that's not a good word, to sell, to bring to the market the Bears. Because the Bears is, of course, as we know, these are the diamond people, and we've talked about this at length as well on the show, that now the advent of natural diamonds, the advent of lab-grown diamonds are a real disruptive event for the market of natural diamonds, because lab-grown diamonds are going to cost up to 3 to 4 times less than natural diamonds. So one would really expect the market for natural diamonds to be materially curtailed. And so I wonder whether Anglo-American is sort of thinking, well, let's basically flog this business as soon as possible while we still can. But if they're choosing an IPO to do that rather than a trade sale, then they must still expect the environment for any type of IPO to be buoyant and to improve. Because in a trade sale, you actually you sound out other potential buyers, and maybe they've already done this, and the other potential buyers may have told them, well, natural diamonds isn't a very good business to be in. I don't know, this is not even speculation, this is just me talking. I think the fact that they might be interested in IPO itself for a business where you can expect one of your primary markets to shrink shows that the IPO environment, the environment for IPOs is expected to improve.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that it just feels that things are now coming together. I mean, I remember I did say a little while ago that I was thinking, I hope Sunak doesn't. I mean, on the one hand, if I was in government, I would want to wait as long as possible before holding an election, because it gives time for the economic situation to improve, and therefore more of an argument. But I remember then also saying that actually in a way, I hope he doesn't do that, because it's just prolonging the agony of him just sort of staying in for the sake of staying in. But anyway, as obviously has happened, he has brought it forward, and and here we are. But anyway, yeah, I think this is things seem to be coming together, and it looks like things will be improving from here from an IPO
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah. I'm just to take that up. Excuse me. I don't properly understand why Sunak brought this forward, to be honest. Yes, it may cut off the pain, but only by a few months. I mean, do you really care? And it would have been rational to me to wait for as long as possible, because it gives time for any improvement in a possible coming cut in interest rates to percolate at least a little bit down into the pockets of people. So I don't really quite understand this. And then also the way in which Sunak and the Conservative Party is presenting itself in the run-up to these elections. I have to admit, I am surprised by this. These are all professionals. There are teams of advisors around the Prime Minister who do nothing else all day but think about how to present the Prime Minister in their best light. Do they really not know that it might be a bad thing to go to a district in Northern Ireland which is called Titanic? What happened to the Titanic? Oh, it was a ship. Oh, it sank. Yeah, that's not good. And then also there's the metaphor every English person knows, which is rearranging the deck chairs on the deck of, well, the Titanic. And so I could go on, and it amuses me, but it also perplexes me. So I don't quite know how and why the Conservatives have seemed to have chosen to deliberately show themselves in the worst light possible. I don't know. It looks to me as if behind the scenes something must have happened. There was a deal. There was something which has prompted Sunak to actually bring his elections forward. From a point of view of political calculus, to me at least, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, he has done it. We're going to see what happens soon enough.
There we are.
And, he's probably bought his ticket to America for the next job he's going to go on to.
Well, it's not
anyway.
as if he needs money. Let's also say that.
That's true. He's not short of a bubble too, is he? Really? Let's face it. Well, certainly his wife isn't. But anyway, okay. Well, look, I think we'll leave it there. Loads of stuff to discuss. Generally, we're going to obviously break it down again over the coming weeks, etc. And yeah, just look out for the guide that I'll be sending out to try to help people understand.
Cool.
What's actually going on. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. As always, a pleasure. We'll be back again very soon. Many thanks.
Lovely, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.